What's going on, guys? So I'm back today to do another video that I love to do, and that is ranking a director's filmography. And these have been some of my favorite videos I've made in my recent memory. I loved making the Charlie Kaufman video. I loved making my video. And so today I want to talk about a filmmaker that really means a lot to me. And I've actually done 2 videos of his on my channel, and that is Mike Flanagan. So as you guys know, if you've watched either my Ouija Origin of Evil video or my more recent video on Midnight Mass, I love Mike Flanagan as a filmmaker. I think he's one of the best horror filmmakers working today. Flanagan does this incredible job of balancing real drama with actual horror. And horror is a lot of times created out of real life tragedy that occurs with people. And people who have really experienced that know how to write great horror films. And I think Flanagan just nails his material perfectly. And I've followed him through his career. I've seen virtually everything he's made, except he's got 2 or 3 early films in his career that were dramas that I haven't been able to track down, that I haven't watched. But as far as from Absentia to currently Midnight Mass, the TV show, I've seen all of his material through that timeline, and I've genuinely enjoyed everything I've watched of his. So in this video, I'm just going to be ranking his directorial films. I feel like it's not really fair to compare his material to his television shows, because in long form television, you get a lot of time to tell stories, and you get a very extended period to build these characters and to let that emotional impact resonate with you. And I think I'm a bigger fan of Flanagan's TV shows than I am his feature films. I don't think that his feature films are bad, obviously, but I think that Flanagan is someone who tells a really great story when given a long period of time to do so. And so I don't feel like it's fair for me to judge those against each other because of just how vastly different the material is and how much more time Flanagan as a showrunner or a director or a writer, producer gets to make these things a reality. But this is my raving endorsement to watch all 3 of his TV shows. They're all available on Netflix, and they all are amazing in their own right. Mike Flanagan has 7 feature films that have happened since his 3 that he made that were dramas that are recorded on his IMDb that I haven't seen yet. And so I'm going to be talking about those 7 films from my least favorite to my favorite. As always, if you could like the video and subscribe to the channel, that helps me out quite a bit. And leave a comment down below and let me know what your favorite of Flanagan's works are. Coming in at number 7 is Before I Wake. This is seemingly people's least favorite in Mike Flanagan's filmography, and I can see why. As far as the character development, it's good like most of his films. You have this drama built between these 2 characters played by Kate Bosworth and Thomas Jane, who they have a young son who dies. And early on in the film, they adopt this new child, Jacob Tremblay, who seemingly has this, he can manifest dreams to where, you know, he can make beautiful things, but when he has nightmares, he's clearly making awful things. And so the movie is really centered around that drama between this family. And I think it's well written, and there's, you know, some couple of cheesy CGI effects here and there, but I feel like this is the most forgettable of Flanagan's works, which is surprising to say because I feel like all of his material is really memorable and have great performances, but this is one where about a week after I watched it, I forgot it. I think it was terrible. I thought the cinematography was nice. I really love the way Flanagan shoots films. He has a very unique style, very unique color palette that he uses in his movies. A lot of his films are very desaturated, very intentionally. And this was just one that I didn't love. I thought that it was good. I thought that it was engaging enough and that there were good characters, but I definitely think it's the weakest of his work. So coming in at number 6 is Absentia, which is Mike Flanagan's first horror film. This movie is pretty solid for a directorial debut, and I'm really surprised at how much of Flanagan's style has translated into his current works from his starting feature. Obviously the effects in this were done on a lower budget, but they still feel very him. The movie follows a woman who her husband disappears, and her sister comes to town to try to convince her to declare him dead in absentia because he's been gone for so long. And just the effects of making that decision and the horrors that she sees after she decides to make that decision. What you get is a really great character drama, and that's what I love about Flanagan's work, is the dynamic that's built between these characters and dealing with something as horrible as losing a spouse, not knowing if they're still out there, and having to say that they're dead, and all the things that happen through that. And obviously he adds his exaggerated horror elements into it to just convey that message even more powerfully, but it's done with such perfect execution, and the film is really well made for someone so early on in their career. And I don't think it's the strongest of Flanagan's work. I think there's some pacing issues throughout that could be worked on. I think some of the performances aren't as strong as some of the other performances. You don't see a lot of his heavy hitters that reappear in his work in this film. But I don't think that means that it's a bad film by any means. I think that it's still worth watching, and it's really cool to see that film and see where Flanagan has come today and how much he's progressed as a director. So coming in at number 5 is Oculus. This is a movie that, for it seems like a lot of Flanagan fans or just horror fans in general, is pretty polarizing. It seems like people either really love it or they hate it, and I'm on the fence about it. I really like it a lot. I think that it's executed really well. I think that the performances are all really great, but some of the pacing in it, and because of the way it's edited and how jarring it's edited, at times it can get a little confusing. Upon rewatch, it was a little easier to kind of piece together the timeline and how the movie was playing out. First time I watched it, I definitely didn't like it as much as the revisits. I do think this has some really cool effects. There's some really horrifying moments in this movie. I love the concept of this mirror. I like that Mike Flanagan, whenever he builds these worlds, has these very large mythos that he surrounds his stories in. And yeah, that Oculus mirror it's very terrifying. The way that the people's faces look throughout the film is really creepy. I loved Karen Gillan in Doctor Who. I think she's a great actress. I really enjoy seeing her in material, and I thought she gave a very strong performance in this movie. Everybody that's in it does a really nice job. It has this really gross, like greenish hue throughout the whole movie for the cinematography that works to kind of make you just feel unsettled and uneasy. This is the most abstract Flanagan gets with his filmmaking, and just telling this kind of scatterbrained story where things are thrown here and there to kind of shift you as an audience member and confuse you as to where the story's going. And I really like that about this movie, and I think it's executed very well. That's why Oculus is number 5 on my list. And at number 4 is going to be Flanagan's Stephen King adaptation, Dr. Sleep. This is a movie that upon release got a lot of hate, and I think that it's really unwarranted how much hate this movie gets. I think that people went into it assuming that it was going to be a direct Stanley Kubrick-esque remake, which I don't know why you would ever assume that a movie was going to give that feel or look or style exactly the same as Kubrick, because Kubrick is Kubrick. He had his style, he had his way of subverting what Stephen King wrote, and notoriously Stephen King hates Stanley Kubrick's adaptation of The Shining, and he turned it on his head and made it his own film. And what Mike Flanagan did instead, Flanagan is someone who appreciates Stanley Kubrick's work, and he's someone who appreciates Stephen King's work. And what he did was he took both artists' visions and combined the two of them to make a movie that I think is incredibly effective and uniquely Flanagan's. I think that Ewan McGregor gives a phenomenal performance in this movie. I think that he really works as Danny Torrance. I like the shift in his character throughout the film. And Kylie Curran gives a fantastic performance as well, and the relationship between her and Ewan McGregor and how their friendship builds over time and how he's there to support her through uncovering this ability of The Shining and all of the things that she can do with her ability that Ewan McGregor can't necessarily do the exact same. And then you have an incredible performance by Rebecca Ferguson, who just comes off as an absolutely terrifying villain. And I love the way that elements from The Shining are incorporated in this movie, but don't feel ham-fisted. It feels all earned. And I've heard some people complain about the third act, but I feel like it's warranted. There's so much build-up and development of these characters that to give the audience member some pokes back at The Shining and to, you know, be back in the Overlook Hotel, it works. And it works for me, and I have not read the book, but I've heard that as far as an adaptation of the book goes, that it's done pretty well. And that's why this movie is number 4 for me. And number 3 is Hush, starring Kate Siegel, Mike Flanagan's wife, who is an incredible actress and one of my favorite working actresses currently. I love her in everything that she's in. I think her most recent performance in Midnight Mass is incredible. The monologues that she delivers in that show are just fucking phenomenal. And I think her performance in this movie is stellar. You have this idea of a deaf writer who's living on their own and then adding this element of home invasion into it. And just most of Kate Siegel's performances is just is through facial expressions, through action. And you really always feel like you're in this space with her. And I think a lot of that is in part to the cinematography and the editing of this movie that really make it terrifying. And Kate Siegel just steals the show. She is so fantastic in this movie. I love it every time I revisit it. I think it's a really strong performance-driven movie. I don't have a lot of problems with it. I just think that the 2 above it on the list are a little bit more impactful for me. But yeah, I think Hush is one of the movies that could move its way up in my list later on. And I think this is definitely one of Mike Flanagan's stronger works. Coming in at number 2 is Mike Flanagan's other Stephen King adaptation, Gerald's Game. This movie left me so incredibly unsettled when I was done watching it that I just felt miserable and upset. It's an incredible character drama more than anything else. Carla Gugino's performance is just stellar. She does a fantastic job. Flanagan has worked with a lot of these people multiple times and is able to just pull perfect performances from them. Henry Thomas gives a very great performance in this movie as a very strange father who does some really horrible things, and it's just really well executed. When you have a plot line of a person chained up in this room by themselves, and most of the performance is going to be this person and how they react to their situation, or be hallucination or seeing things in reality or whatever's going on with Carla Gugino's character. The way she reacts to these situations is what makes it so engaging. And the cinematography plays a huge role in that. You really feel confined in this space. And when the flashbacks happen, you're given a little brevity out of this room, but every other moment feels so suffocating and like you're there with her and you just want her to get out. And it's so well done. And intermingling this family drama with Carla Gugino's character being in a real sense of danger, not knowing whether she's gonna survive. It's just really well executed, and it's one of the pitch perfect Flanagan films. This is definitely a 5-star movie for me. I don't have any problems with it. I think it's fantastically executed. I think the performances are all great. The third act is wonderful. If you were going through the films with me, coming in at number 1 is Ouija, Origin of Evil. I'm not gonna go too in detail to it. What I'm gonna do is leave a link up above about my in-depth review that I've given of this movie. But yeah, still to this day, upon revisiting, I think it's one of Mike Flanagan's scariest films. He has a great cast and all the performances are fantastic. And I just think that it's some of Flanagan's most interesting material. I love where this story goes. I love the internal family drama. I think that it's executed really well. I just enjoy it more and more. And I know there's people that really hate this movie for some reason, and I do not understand why the hate is there. I think taking a property for a movie that did horrible in the box office, got terrible reviews and people hated it, to creating a prequel to it that's engaging and fun and interesting and genuinely fucking terrifying is impressive on Flanagan's part. And I just think it is one of his pitch perfect movies. And like I said, I'll put a link up there so you guys can watch my full thoughts on that movie, but that is why Ouija is my number 1 Flanagan film. What did you think of my list? Leave me a comment down below. What's your favorite Flanagan movie? I'd love to hear your opinions on what your favorite of his work is, what your least favorite is of his. As always, if you could like and subscribe to the channel, it helps me out a lot. I've got new content coming out weekly for you guys. As always, thanks so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.